I confess I was somewhat troubled at this change. I feared the consequences of her displeasure, and even made some efforts to recover the ground I had lost, and with better apparent success than I could have anticipated. At one time, I, merely in common civility, asked after her cough. Immediately her long visage relaxed into a smile, and she favoured me with a particular history of that and her other infirmities, followed by an account of her pious resignation, delivered in the usual emphatic, declamatory style, which no writing can portray. "But there's one remedy for all, my dear, and that's resignation," a toss of the head. "Resignation to the will of Heaven," an uplifting of the hands and eyes. "It has always supported me through all my trials, and always will do," a succession of nods. "But then it isn't everybody that can say that," a shake of the head. "But I'm one of the pious ones, Miss Grey," a very significant nod and toss. "And thank Heaven, I always was," another nod, "and I glory in it," an emphatic clasping of the hands and shaking of the head. And with several texts of Scripture, misquoted or misapplied, and religious exclamations so redolent of the ludicrous in the style of delivery and manner of bringing in, if not in the expressions themselves, that I declined repeating them, she withdrew, tossing her large head in high good humour, with herself at least, and left me hoping that, after all, she was rather weak than wicked. At her next visit to Wellwood House, I went so far as to say I was glad to see her looking so well. The effect of this was magical. The words, intended as a mark of civility, were received as a flattering compliment. Her countenance brightened up, and from that moment she became as gracious and benign as heart could wish, in outward semblance at least. From what I now saw of her, and what I heard from the children, I know that, in order to gain her cordial friendship, I had but to utter a word of flattery at each convenient opportunity, but this was against my principles, and for lack of this, the capricious old dame soon deprived me of her favour again, and I believe did me much secret injury. She could not greatly influence her daughter-in-law against me, because, between that lady and herself, there was a mutual dislike, chiefly shown by her in secret detractions and calumniations, by the other in an excess of frigid formality in her demeanour, and no fawning flattery of the elder could thaw away the wall of ice which the younger interposed between them. But with her son the old lady had better success. He would listen to all she had to say, provided she could soothe his fretful temper, and refrain from irritating him by her own asperities, and I have reason to believe that she considerably strengthened his prejudice against me. She would tell him that I shamefully neglected the children, and even his wife did not attend to them as she ought, and that he must look after them himself, or they would all go to ruin. Thus urged, he would frequently give himself the trouble of watching them from the windows during their play. At times he would follow them through the grounds, and too often came suddenly upon them while they were dabbling in the forbidden well, talking to the coachman in the stables, or revelling in the filth of the farmyard. And I, meanwhile, wearily standing by, having previously exhausted my energy in vain attempts to get them away. Often, too, he would unexpectedly pop his head into the schoolroom while the young people were at meals, and find them spilling their milk over the table and themselves, plunging their fingers into their own or each other's mugs, or quarrelling over their victuals like a set of tiger's cubs. If I were quiet at the moment, I was conniving at their disorderly conduct. If, as was frequently the case, I happened to be exalting my voice to enforce order, I was using undue violence, and setting the girls a bad example by such ungentleness of tone and language. I remember one afternoon in spring, when, owing to the rain, they could not go out, but by some amazing good fortune they had all finished their lessons, and yet abstained from running down to tease their parents, a trick that annoyed me greatly, but which on rainy days I seldom could prevent their doing, because below they found novelty and amusement, especially when visitors were in the house, and their mother, though she bid me keep them in the schoolroom, would never chide them for leaving it, or trouble herself to send them back. But this day they appeared satisfied with their present abode, and what is more wonderful still, seemed disposed to play together without depending on me for amusement, and without quarrelling with each other. Their occupation was a somewhat puzzling one. They were all squatted together on the floor by the window, over a heap of broken toys and a quantity of birds' eggs, or rather egg-shells, for the contents had luckily been abstracted. These shells they had broken up and were pounding into small fragments, to what end I could not imagine, but so long as they were quiet and not in positive mischief, I did not care, and with a feeling of unusual repose I sat by the fire, putting the finishing stitches to a frock for Mary Ann's doll, intending, when that was done, to begin a letter to my mother. Suddenly the door opened, and the dingy head of Mr. Bloomfield looked in. "All very quiet here? What are you doing?" said he. "No harm to-day, at least," thought I. But he was of a different opinion. Advancing to the window, and seeing the children's occupations, he testily exclaimed, "What in the world are you about?" "We're grinding egg-shells, papa," cried Tom. "How dare you make such a mess, you little devils? Don't you see what confounded work you're making of the carpet?" The carpet was a plain brown drugget. "Miss Grey, did you know what they were doing?" "Yes, sir." "You knew it?" "Yes." "You knew it, and you actually sat there and permitted them to go on without a word of reproof." "I didn't think they were doing any harm." "Any harm? Why, look there! Just look at that carpet, and see, was there ever anything like it in a Christian house before? No wonder your room is not fit for a pigsty. No wonder your pupils are worse than a litter of pigs. No wonder— Oh, I declare, it puts me quite past my patience." And he departed, shutting the door after him with a bang that made the children laugh. "It puts me quite past my patience, too," muttered I. Getting up, and seizing the poker, I dashed it repeatedly into the cinders, and stirred them up with unwonted energy, thus easing my irritation under pretence of mending the fire. After this, Mr. Bloomfield was continually looking in to see if the schoolroom was in order, and, as the children were continually littering the floor with fragments of toys, sticks, stones, stubble, leaves, and other rubbish, which I could not prevent their bringing, or oblige them to gather up, and which the servants refused to clean after them, I had to spend a considerable portion of my valuable leisure moments on my knees upon the floor, in painfully reducing things to order. Once I told them that they should not taste their supper till they had picked up everything from the carpet. Fanny might have hers when she had picked up a certain quantity, Mary Ann when she had gathered twice as many, and Tom was to clear away the rest. Wonderful to state, the girls did their part. But Tom was in such a fury that he flew upon the table, scattered the bread and milk about the floor, struck his sisters, kicked the coals out of the coal-pan, attempted to overthrow the table and chairs, and seemed inclined to make a Douglas larder of the whole contents of the room. But I seized upon him, and sending Mary Ann to call her mamma, held him, in spite of kicks, blows, yells, and execrations, till Mrs. Bloomfield made her appearance. "What is the matter with my boy?" said she. And when the matter was explained to her, all she did was send for the nursery-maid to put the room in order, and bring Master Bloomfield his supper. "There now!" cried Tom triumphantly, looking up from his viands, with his mouth almost too full for speech. "There now, Miss Grey, you see I've got my supper in spite of you, and I haven't picked up a single thing." The only person in the house who had any real sympathy for me was the nurse, for she had suffered like afflictions, though in a smaller degree, as she had not the task of teaching, nor was she so responsible for the conduct of her charge. "Oh, Miss Grey," she would say, "you have some trouble with them children." "I have indeed, Betty, and I dare say you know what it is." "Aye, I do so, but I don't vex myself over 'em as you do, and then, you see, I hit 'em a slap sometimes, and them little uns, I gives 'em a good whipping now and then. There's nothing else will do for 'em, as what they say. Howsoever, I lost my place for it." "Have you, Betty? I heard you were going to leave." Bless you, yes. Missus gave me a warning of 3 weeks sen. She told me afore Christmas how it would be if I hit 'em again, but I couldn't hold my hand off 'em at nothing. I know not how you do, for Miss Mary Ann's worse by the half nor her sisters." End of chapter 4. Recording by Melissa.